Long, long ago, in a land known as Sumer, an ancient civilization emerged. It was one of the earliest in the world, blooming in the southern region of Mesopotamia, which is today's southeastern Iraq. This civilization made its mark from the mid-4th millennium BCE, until Babylonia's rise in the late 3rd millennium BCE. These people, known as the Sumerians, are important because they were among the first to fully embody what we call a civilization. They had organized cities, sophisticated art, trade, writing, and monumental architecture, including those famous ziggurats or temples. Notably, the Sumerians are credited with inventing writing and the legal systems that were essential to maintaining order in their city-states. These legal codes set penalties for specific wrongdoings, reflecting a crucial understanding that a society couldn't function without shared values and respect for life and property. The Sumerians' contributions to human history reached far and wide. They helped people realize their shared connection to the same world, mainly through their focus on trade and commerce. Sumeria wasn't just a society, it was a cultural and social milestone in the development of our species. You might wonder why we call them Sumerians when they referred to themselves differently. The Sumerians called themselves the black-headed people and their land of the civilized lords. The Akkadians, who came later, are the ones who gave them the name Sumerians. It's still a mystery why the Akkadians used this term for the people of southern Mesopotamia. But here's the interesting part. Other ancient cultures had their own versions of this name. In the Bible, you can find Shinar, the Egyptians had Sngr, and the Hittites used Sanha-A, all of which could be Western variants of Sumer. The Sumerians weren't outsiders or invaders, they were native to this land. The archaeological records show continuous cultural development from the early Ubod period. It's a bit like seeing a family tree where there are no missing branches. This region was known for its dry climate. Today, it receives less than 5 inches of rainfall a year. So, the Sumerians faced a significant challenge: how to manage the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to ensure a year-round water supply for farming and daily life. They used a range of technical terms for canals, dikes, and reservoirs in their language, emphasizing their expertise in managing water. The Sumerian language was the key to understanding this society. They were skilled farmers who migrated from the north, where they had mastered the art of irrigation agriculture. Their journey south was driven by the need to find fertile land, made so by the silt deposits from the Tigris and Euphrates. As you might guess, controlling water was a big deal in this arid region, and the Sumerians knew it. They established temple-centered social structures that mobilized labor and technology for water management. This was essential for their survival and prosperity in a challenging environment. In essence, the Sumerians were the original masters of irrigation, and they transformed the southern Mesopotamian floodplain into a thriving civilization. They left an indelible mark on human history and set the stage for the many civilizations that would follow. Let's begin with the Ubod period. At this time, something remarkable was happening in Sumer. A unique style of fine, painted pottery began to appear, spreading across Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf. As this was happening, the ancient city of Eridu was slowly being overshadowed by the neighboring city of Uruk. Now, things got really interesting when we moved from the Ubod period to the Uruk period, which roughly spans from 4500 to 3100 BCE. During this time, trade was thriving. People were transporting goods along the canals and rivers of southern Mesopotamia, and this allowed large temple-centered cities to flourish. These cities were becoming organized hubs, employing specialized workers to keep things running smoothly. But there was a catch. The Sumerians, in order to expand, needed more labor, and so they started using slaves captured from the hill country. The evidence for this includes actual artifacts and texts from that time. The impact of Sumerian civilization was incredible. Their culture and economy influenced neighboring regions, from the Taurus Mountains in Turkey to the Mediterranean Sea in the west, and even as far east as central Iran. However, their power wasn't limitless. As their cities spread, the idea of maintaining colonies far away through military force was challenging. The Uruk period eventually came to a close. It coincided with a dry period known as the Prior Oscillation, which lasted from around 3200 to 2900 BCE. This marked the end of a much wetter and warmer climate period known as the Holocene climatic optimum, which occurred thousands of years ago. By the time our historical record opens, the Sumerians appeared to be primarily located in southern Mesopotamia. Legendary figures like Enmerkar and Gilgamesh are associated with the transfer of culture from Eridu to Uruk. Fast forward to the early dynastic period. This is where we find the earliest records of Sumerian rulers. Some names on the early king list might be more legend than fact, but eventually, we can match those names to real people through archaeological evidence. Etana, the 13th king of the first dynasty of Kish, is one such example. Lugal-Zage-C, the priest king of Umma, was another influential figure. He overthrew the Lagash dynasty, took Uruk as his capital, and created an empire extending from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. The Lagash dynasty was a period of monumental monuments and early empire building. Enatum of Lagash is well known for annexing much of Sumer. His power reached from the city-states of Kish and Uruk to and Lhasa. As we move further through time, we enter the Akkadian dynasty. The Semitic Akkadian language started appearing in names around 2800 BCE. Sargon the Great, a mighty ruler, held power from 2350 to 2330 BCE. However, even during his reign, many administrative tablets were still written in Sumerian. This is because Sumerian remained the language of the scribes. Akkadian, Sumerian, and their speakers coexisted for a long time, from 2800 to 1800 BCE. They shared the Mesopotamian landscape, but eventually, Sumerian ceased to be spoken, marking the end of an era. The land of Sumer, with its clay tablets and monumental empires, paved the way for the rise of many civilizations. It was a place where history was etched into the very soil, a story waiting to be discovered in the dust of time. In the aftermath of the Akkadian Empire's fall at the hands of the Ksans, a native Sumerian hero, Gudea of Lagash, emerged. Gudea championed artistic growth and continued the tradition of Sargonid kings' claims to divinity. As Sumer saw the light at the end of a dark period, this renaissance brought hope. The third dynasty led by Nammu and Shulgi, shone during what we now call the Sumerian Renaissance. Their power reached far, extending into northern Mesopotamia. Yet, change was afoot. The region was gradually becoming more Semitic, with waves of Matu, or Amorites, pouring in. These newcomers would later establish the Babylonian Empire. Still, Sumerian remained a sacred language, akin to how Latin was used in medieval Europe as long as cuneiform script endured. Ecologically, Sumer's bountiful land was under threat due to rising salinity. Irrigation, essential for agriculture, brought its own challenges. Evaporation left behind dissolved salts, making it harder to sustain farming. By 2000 BCE, a depopulation crisis hit southern Mesopotamia, leading to the downfall of Sumerian culture. Soon, a new chapter unfolded. Elamite invaders sacked and Sumer came under Amorite rule, marking the Middle Bronze Age. The independent Amorite states, summarized as the dynasty of Isin, held sway until the rise of Babylonia under Hammurabi in approximately 1730 BCE. This period was also characterized by a significant shift in population from southern Iraq to the north due to increasing soil salinity. Soil salinity had been a persistent issue, leading to a decline in the population. The balance of power shifted, with Akkadian becoming the dominant language, and Sumerian persisted mainly as a sacred, learned language. Now, let's venture into the vibrant world of Sumerian agriculture. The Sumerians embraced an agricultural lifestyle, much like that of ancient Egypt. They grew barley, wheat, dates, and a variety of vegetables. Their livestock included cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs. Oxen toiled in the fields, and donkeys served as transport. Irrigation was the lifeblood of Sumerian farming, employing techniques like shadufs, canals, dikes, and reservoirs. However, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers' frequent violent floods required constant maintenance. After the flood season, farmers flooded and then drained their fields. Oxen would trample the soil and kill weeds, followed by plowing, harrowing, and planting. Over time, barley replaced wheat as the primary crop due to its salt tolerance. Harvest season was a community affair. 3-person teams, consisting of reapers, binders, and sheaf arrangers, worked together. Threshing wagons and sleds separated grain from stalks, followed by winnowing to separate grain from chaff. Let's turn our gaze to architecture. Sumerian structures primarily consisted of mud brick, made without mortar or cement. These structures were frequently rebuilt, gradually elevating the cities on mounds known as tells. Among their architectural marvels, ziggurats stood out. These towering structures supported grand temples. Some scholars even theorize that these ziggurats inspired the tale of the Tower of Babel from the Book of Genesis. Sumerians also built houses from reeds and employed arches, creating a strong roof type called a dome. The realm of Sumer was rich in culture and innovation. Sumerian culture was influenced by two main centers, Eridu and Nippur. Eridu was associated with Enki, the god of wisdom, while Nippur worshipped Enlil, the lord of the ghostland. These gods reflected the unique aspects of these cities, and over time, their cultures blended. In the realm of law and governance, Sumerians developed a legal code, perhaps most famously represented by the Code of Hammurabi. The Sumerians preferred diplomacy over conflict, and treaties from this era reflect their inclination for peaceful resolutions. While late Sumerian law protected women and granted them a higher status than in some contemporary societies, the culture was predominantly male-dominated. Music played an essential role in Sumerian life. The people had a deep love for music, and it was an integral part of their religious and civic ceremonies. Lyres were particularly popular. Now, let's delve into the world of trade and economy. The Sumerians engaged in a vast network of trade, connected to distant lands. They imported obsidian from Anatolia, lapis lazuli from northeastern Afghanistan, and beads from Dilmun, modern Bahrain. The Epic of Gilgamesh even references trade with far-off regions to acquire precious resources. Cedar from Lebanon was especially prized. The Sumerians, like many ancient civilizations, used slaves for various tasks, although they weren't the cornerstone of the economy. In their craftsmanship, Sumerian potters painted their pots with cedar oil. Mud brick houses were periodically reconstructed due to wear and tear. In their more advanced structures, they used techniques like buttresses, recesses, half-columns, and clay nails. The story of Sumer is one of grand ziggurats, bountiful fields, and diplomatic wisdom. It was a civilization that embraced change, faced ecological challenges, and left behind a rich legacy. The Sumerians were no strangers to conflict, for their city-states battled almost ceaselessly for 2 millennia. These struggles were a crucible for military prowess. The first recorded conflict occurred in 2525 BCE, between Lagash and Umma, a battle preserved in the Stele of Vultures. The stele depicts the Lagash king leading a Sumerian army, mainly composed of foot soldiers. These infantrymen wielded spears, donning copper helmets and leather shields. They stood united in a phalanx formation, hinting at their professionalism and discipline. In their military endeavors, the Sumerians employed chariots harnessed to onagers, though these early designs were less effective in combat and perhaps served more as transports. Yet, the crew carried battle axes and lances. The Sumerian chariot was a 4 or 2-wheeled cart, drawn by a pair of onagers, comprising a woven basket and solid 3-piece wheels. Sumerian cities stood encircled by defensive walls. These walls, made of mud brick, weren't always impervious to their adversaries, revealing the complex nature of siege warfare in this ancient land. In matters of faith, Sumer was a polytheistic society, much like other cities in its vicinity. However, the Sumerians were one of the first to put their beliefs into writing. Each city-state had its own patron deities, temples, and priest-kings, with no centralized pantheon. Their chief god was Anu, symbolizing heaven, while Ki represented the earth. The divine group, the Anunnaki, included deities like Enki in the south at Eridu, Enlil in the north at Nippur, and Inanna, the goddess of Venus, at Uruk's Aina temple. Sun, the ever-shining Utu, was revered in Sippar, and the moon, Nana, Hinur. Namu, one of the names of the mother goddess, was considered the original matrix. Countless minor deities played diverse roles. The political fortunes of cities often correlated with the religious importance of their patron god. According to Sumerian belief, the gods created humans from clay to serve them. Yet, these deities weren't always benevolent. They could express their displeasure through earthquakes and storms. In the Sumerian cosmos, the universe was a flat disk enclosed by a tin dome. The afterlife was a dismal descent into the netherworld, where one's eternity was marked by a wretched existence as a jiddim, a ghost. Sumerian temples were a focal point of their culture. These temples featured a forecourt with a central pond for purification, known as the Abzu. Inside, the temple included a central nave with aisles on either side, alongside rooms for priests. The end of the temple housed a podium and a mud brick table for offering sacrifices. Granaries and storehouses often stood nearby. Over time, Sumerians began to build their temples atop multi-tiered square structures, known as ziggurats, rising as a series of terraces. The Sumerian tale unfolds with the clashing of armies, the enigmatic ways of gods, and the magnificent ascent to the heavens through their temples.